Radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network.
All right. Good evening, Fade to Black. How you doing? Today's Wednesday, December 20th, 2023. 5 days to Christmas. 4 days to Christmas Eve. Let's do this, man. It's going to be a great show tonight. Stephen Bassett is with us. He is back, and I want you to help support what we do here. Get yourself a Fade to Black t-shirt. 2 ways to get them. Get a Game Changer membership. You can just order a shirt. There's 2 shirts to get. 2 ways to get them. The links are below. Everything is signed. Everything includes shipping, so it's simple. Get yourself a Christmas present right now. Get yourself a Fade to Black t-shirt. Tonight, Stephen Bassett of PRG and co-founder of the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance joins us. And tonight, we're going to take a look back at Disclosure in 2023, discuss some of the highlights, as only Stephen can, of course, and then take a look forward into 2024. He's got a lot of stuff going on. Tonight, Stephen is live from Washington, D.C., from his East Coast headquarters. We're going to be going through everything because he is a political activist. That's what he calls himself. He is an activist. Do you know what an activist is? Stephen will tell you tonight. He's a disclosure advocate. He's the executive director of the Paradigm Research Group, PRG, founded in 1996 to end a government-imposed embargo on truth behind extraterrestrial-related phenomena. He's got a lot of stuff going on right now. I want to get straight to it. It is an important show, and it's one of the best ways for me to end the year. This is an early Christmas gift. Here he is right now. You ready? You ready? Oh, he's wiping his camera. Stephen, are you ready? Are you ready?
Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas, Jimmy.
Merry Christmas, Stephen. Before we get started tonight, how you doing, brother? I know you're out on the East Coast. We were just hanging out, it seems like a few weeks ago. Back in November in Las Vegas for Stairway to the Stars. And then I was off. I left the country for a few weeks. I got back, and first thing on the books is Stephen Bassett of PRG, man. So although I've just seen you, what's going on out there in D.C.?
What's going on in D.C.? Well, it's pretty much as usual. It's peaceful, quiet, not too cold. It's not too hot. It's okay. And all around us, people are keeping their head while everyone else is losing theirs and blaming it on them. It's all just very, very reasonable. But let me just say this. This is going to be a year like no other, what's coming up. It's going to be the year from hell politically. It's going to be the election to end all elections. It's going to be the campaign to end all campaigns. I can't bear the thought of it. I know that somewhere I'm going to break down and just crawl up in a ball in the closet, I think. So that's coming. Meanwhile, some of the most profound events in human history may be taking place. So that's a quick glimpse of what it's like here. But I got to be here for sure. Yeah.
I don't envy your location. It is going to be a crazy 2024 for a lot of different reasons. And then when we take a look back at 2023, let's go back further than that. I don't know, Stephen, how many times you have been on the show. You've been a guest to my house, and we are friends. But I don't know How many times, Stephen, where you have said, okay, man, this is the year, right? Well, it's not just you, right? It's the whole community, because we know what's going on. We know what we have seen. We know what the evidence is, and the friends and the researchers and everything else, where it's always right at the edge, and it's a new year, and we do the same thing right about this time of the year. Okay, next year is the year. But it seems different this time around. Does it seem different to you?
Yeah, it's different. First of all, I get a bad rap there, but I understand it, right? I mean, it's people remember it a certain way, and I understand why. What I've done over the years is I've pointed out this could be the years, or this looks really good, or if this can happen, that can happen. And there have been times, like after 9/11, I was basically saying we're not going anywhere. I mean, this thing is tabled. So, but people like to think I'm the eternal optimist, and I'm always predicting, that that's going to happen, and I kind of get a laugh out of that. But the truth is, Jimmy, if you want to be an activist, and you want to get people to get involved and get part of creating something or making something happen that's going to be very hard, you're challenging the government, and you're going to them and saying, okay, look, this is what we got to do. Now you understand. There's a chance in hell it's going to work, but it could work, right? I don't know, right? And right now it looks really, really bad, but let's get together. No, that's not the way it works. If you want to be an activist, you've got to define a goal and prize that it needs to be obtained, and it usually involves social justice of some kind. Almost always social justice of some kind. And you point out there's the prize, and we go get it. And your job as an activist is to keep people focused on that prize, no matter what happens: asteroids, volcanic explosions, worldwide war, nuclear weapons, massive pandemics, whatever. You got to keep them going, or you'll never get there. And that's what you do. And then if people want to give you a hard time, it's like John the Baptist. John the Baptist was saying year after year after year that the Messiah is coming. The Messiah is coming. And finally, he came. And then they cut John the Baptist's head off. So it's a tough gig. I don't recommend. I should have been a radio guy. I could have done well.
Yeah, maybe so. I have John the Baptist's mummified head in the other room. No, I'm kidding.
Hold on to that. No, that could be worth something. And by the way, I'm willing to donate my mummified head to you. You can keep it in the room too. It would be very cool. It would be nice to think like it. Okay, well, look. Let me.
Do you know that there's 9 churches in the world that all claim to have the head of John the Baptist? Now that they all can't be right, but maybe one is. Isn't that it's a little factoid for you right there. So this church here does not have the head of John the Baptist.
So some travel agency out there is marketing the John the Baptist mummified head tour, where you go to each location, right? And you get like a meal and whatever. You got get the limo, and you go and you look at that one, and then in the end they take a poll to see which one thinks that's the head. I like
you're onto something there, man. Yeah, you're on to something. Would you do that with me? We could do it together.
Of course I would do that. And we take a picture of every head and we shoot it back as we go along, and it's on social media, and then we take votes amongst the social media as to which head is most authentic. It would be huge, man, huge. And I see a series on Netflix.
Have you seen? I've got to think about where this is right now because I just finished it. I think it's on Max, Cinemax, Max, HBO Max, whatever it's called now.
Max.
There's a documentary series called I don't want to screw this up. Love
Google.
Is love is the answer or something like that, and it's about this cult. And the woman that ran the cult, her name was Mother Love. Amy Carlson is her name.
I've heard of
it. Right,
it.
she's dead. The series just came out. It's 3 parts.
Yeah.
Watch it. Watch it and just what, dude. Oh my. And now talking about the mummified head of John the Baptist.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go watch this documentary. Just
All right.
go trip on that, man. Okay. Now if we back up to 2023, and we look at these different events that took place. Not only did we have the UFO, call them UAP, whatever you want, we had those hearings. We had the media involvement. We had all of the researchers and things and stuff that were leaked. We'll talk about David Grush in a second. We even had Jaime Maussan get in front of the Mexican Congress twice with mummies. So it's very big deals. And it's never been like that for ufology ever, not even going back to 1968, the last congressional hearing, which was, a joke. But it's been really that long since anything like this went on in front of states, and I'm talking about countries when I say states.
Yeah.
And that is just a small piece of what went down in 2023. What are some of the highlights for you?
Well, this year will be considered very historical, depending upon what happens in the next month or so. But this year is pretty profound. We're exactly 3 years into this period. 3 years. It starts in December of 2020, but there was a lead up to it. It started in December of 2017. So there's like a 3-year period that kind of led up to it, and you had people going up on the Hill, a lot of briefing taking place. A lot of members of Congress were talking to witnesses. There were things going on behind the scenes. The press was really picking up on this because of the New York Times articles in December of 2017. Those were the trigger. They triggered what followed. Just boom, just cascaded right out of it. The first 3 years was kind of a learning curve, getting up to speed. And then in December of 2023, the end game began. And the end game begins when the first legislation ever in the history of the United States, not in the world, because I think there's been a couple of things that's dropped into a legislation. Maybe it could have been Brazil, could have been Italy, whatever. But the first in the United States, the first legislation on this issue is presented by the Senate, sponsored by Marco Rubio, to initiate the legislation of the UAP issue. And it does a number of things. It's not a large bill, and it calls for a report, public and private, which were delivered. Private to the Congress, the public, on the June 25 of 2021. And that was the first tranche of legislation. And it's notable that was being put together in the middle of the pandemic. So the pandemic is raging all through 2020. We may have forgotten what that was like. Meanwhile, Rubio and others are working on that legislation, and they eventually get it out there about mid-year, and ultimately it gets signed. So that was 2020. Then they begin working on another piece of legislation. This goes on in 2021. The pandemic continues to rage, right? But and there's a lot of political issues, no question. Ultimately, they get a second bill. This one sponsored by Senator Gillibrand, also of the House Intelligence Committee. The Senate Intelligence Committee. And this goes further. It's about twice as large as the first amendment, and it sets up the office, establishes. I think they changed the name at that point. It had been UAP Task Force, but it expands the engagement of the issue. They had, I think there was a briefing that came up on the Hill. There's been a couple of those. And then in 2021, tough year, but then in 2022, they went got busy making up the third language, also coming from the Senate. This was sponsored by Shermer, the chairman of the committee. This bill was substantial. It was twice as large as the last bill. It gets into a lot of witness issues and protecting them, and also establishing the office and funding and things like that. All of these are easily found, and you can read these bills online. And so that's 2022. And then 2023 begins. And I knew that 2023 probably was the last year. They only needed one more significant piece of legislation to put the whole package together, because that's what they've been doing. they've been setting up something for something big that was coming. But not all the pieces were there. A lot had happened. No question, they accomplished a lot, but it wasn't done. And so I'm thinking, okay, that's what's going to happen. And so as 2023 is moving forward, we learned that there's going to be some new legislation in the Senate submission for the NDAA. It's a modest amount. It's nothing significant. It's in play. But then something happens. And this is one of those historic events that's going to get a lot, and I mean a lot of attention. It wasn't expected. It wasn't supposed to happen. It wasn't in the script per se. It's not a strict script, but it is a general script. And it happened, and we know why. And that is the emergence of David Grush. He came out as a whistleblower, one of the few to do that in a public way, absolutely legitimate in that he claimed that the government's policy was illegal. I'm going to get back to that later. And that he had very important information, that he had gone through the proper sources. He had tried to get the information where it was supposed to go as part of his job. Then he starts getting harassed by people in his immediate environment to the point where he actually takes that grievance to the Intelligence Committee of the IG, rather, Inspector General of the Intelligence Committee. He's represented by the former Inspector General of the Inspector General of the Intelligence Community. He gets his grievance dealt with, and I suppose the people that were hassling him were quieted down. Still, nothing has really happened with the information, and then he starts getting threats. You see, you can quiet down the people in your office, but you can't stop people from anonymous threats, not in the modern world. There's 1,000 ways to threaten people anonymously, and he was getting those. His family was getting those. And so at some point, he'd had enough. And he decided, that's it. I'm going forward. I'm going to go public, which is going to give me protection, and I'm going to be a whistleblower. And so he lines up Pulitzer Prize winner Ralph Blumenthal, Leslie Kean, very important journalist, to represent him in terms of getting the news out somewhere. They approached a lot of major legacy journalistic outlets, but they could not do it as fast as Grush wanted. He was not just, hey, let's have a hearing someday or let's do an article, but rather, I want this out now. They needed time. Those legacy entities have lots of lawyers. They got to vet everything to death. And so they went to the brief, perfectly fine journalism, great article they wrote, and they also simultaneously presented the interview that went on News Nation with Ross Coulthard. That drops on June the 5th like an ontological bomb. Nobody saw it coming. I was at the Contact in the Desert conference where I'd spoken. It's that morning, Monday. I wake up late. People are running around the hotel. People are saying, "Did you know? Did you know? Did you know?" And I'm going, "No what? No what? No what?" And they're saying there's going to be an interview, and this whistleblower is going to come forward and say there's ETs or something like that. And so we all gathered together and watched this in a room live. It was a big moment in my life. It was very exciting, very intense. And then afterwards, we went and had an even bigger meeting, and a number of people, Danny Sheehan and Richard Dolan, were talking about it on stage. And it was just a very important moment. That was June the 5th. And I knew right then, whoa, this is much bigger than many may understand. This is just not another witnesses. This is a game changer. What's going to happen? All right. And so what he basically said in the interview in the articles, he then repeated under oath to a House subcommittee that was put together by Tim Burchett, Anna Paulina Luna, Nancy Mace, with help from Matt Gaetz. The first real hearing with that kind of witness, if it ever, really, frankly. The other were mostly government briefing types hearings, but this is a real witness under oath, first one, and that was on July 26th. So they set that hearing up, and eventually he said then under oath what he said to Coulthard. However, that's not the big story. The big story, and this is where it gets interesting, is that Grush has just dropped that we have non-human technology and non-human bodies. He was asked, he said, are these bodies are non-human, or these are bodies? He said biologics, and then later said, well, are these biologics non-human? And he says, well, what are they? And he says non-human. So he's confirmed non-human bodies. He's confirmed multiple non-human craft. That validates Roswell. Essentially is informal disclosure, not the formal, but informal disclosure. He's just parked that out in the world and to see what happened. Was he repudiated? No. Was he arrested? No. He was hassled a little bit. Some idiots put out some of his medical records, but that's just, people being idiots. But in terms, it wasn't challenged. And so it's now out and validated in the sense that he checked his sources. In other words, he checked the issue. He had firsthand people tell him that that's what was going on because they were in that program, but that's still secondhand. But because he was involved in intelligence for years, he had many contacts. And so he contacts these people he knows in intelligence and just asks them, can any of you confirm what I just learned? And many of them said, oh, yeah, that's right. And so then he goes to the Intel Committee and so forth and so forth. And this goes on for about 2 years. So essentially, ET presence, Roswell, all of that has just been confirmed by David Grush. Okay. And that's June the 5th. So what do you do? Now, this creates a problem for just about everybody. All right. It creates a problem for the White House. It creates a problem for Dr. Kirkpatrick over at Arrow. And it creates a problem for the Senate Intelligence Committee because they do not want to be getting to that now. That's for down the line. We were working toward that. We need to get the bill done. All right. What do you do? Do you just leave that hanging out there indefinitely? He's like, yeah, we'll get around to that.
Well, okay, let me jump in before and trust me, Stephen, I've known you long enough when I need to pump the brakes and back up. Okay. So let's pump the brakes and back up for a second. When he was making these statements, and I want to go back and examine a few of these, what was surprising, if not shocking to me, was the very focused questions coming from the members of the committee, number one.
Okay.
And number two, their attention. Now, some of this they knew already. He had already presented his stuff and they vetted him. But there were members of that committee that were hearing this kind of stuff for the first time. But it was the lack of reaction to me, which was the most surprising part about it. How did you assess the reaction and the focus questioning?
The reaction by who?
By anybody on that committee. I don't think anybody freaked out.
Well, first of all, you have to understand. Remember, the education of Congress starts all the way back in 2018. Christopher Mellon was leading that.
Wait, that's true. But we're talking about little green men in the House chambers, okay, being discussed. That's a whole different story.
Well, but again, the point I'm making is there had been plenty of briefing behind the scenes of members of Congress for several years. And so the subject, essentially, they were not being surprised by anything by and large, because remember, these were private briefings that took place in members' offices where anything could be said. It wasn't going to go public, wasn't being recorded. And so I have a feeling they were told a lot of information that was quite advanced. All right. There was no reason to be holding back. They were talking to actual witnesses, people in government. How many, we don't know, but it went on for several years. So let's assume that the Congress was brought up to speed, which is why we ended up getting legislation at all, because unless they got to the place.
Yes, I agree with that. What I'm saying is there wasn't anybody there, excuse my language here, but nobody there called bullshit. Right. And that was the other part. I mean, when you're just sitting back going, okay, everybody's focused and asking, nobody is contesting what he is saying. And it was shocking.
Well, it may be shocking. Well, it wasn't shocking me because I was aware that this education of Congress, which was critical to the disclosure process, had been underway for several years. And so he wasn't going to say anything that shocking. Now, they may have been shocked if they saw the Ross Coulthard interview and realized, wait a minute, a UAP task force guy with an intel background is going to be speaking publicly that we have crashed vehicles. They may have been shocked for a moment, but the hearing didn't take place until the 26th of July, almost 41 days later. So they had plenty of time, and they knew a lot of what he was going to say. That's the way those things work. They have some advanced discussions. But it is notable that obviously nobody in that room had significant objections or felt like challenging this, and it would have been a mistake, because what he was saying was true, absolutely true. And to challenge him, unless you have really good information that no, it's not, you don't do that. You let the person tell their truth under oath. And the thing about the hearing is that he went further during the hearing because of the way questions are asked. And it is, when you're asked a question, is such and such and such and such happening, and you say, well, I can't discuss that in a public forum, that's basically a yes. All right. But
I felt the same thing. And now let's staying backwards before we move forwards. When he says you don't have to wipe your camera, Steve.
I'm sorry. It keeps going off, and it's a problem I have with my phone. I'll stop.
Okay. It keeps going off.
It goes whatever blank.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll see if it does. We'll see if it does. You are in Washington, D.C. They can do whatever they want with that camera, brother. So is this? He said it reminded me of like the court. The court, the hearings in The Godfather, or the hearings with Howard Hughes, right? Where you can hear the murmurs in the room when suddenly he says, okay, man, check it out. I got the names, right? I got the addresses. I got whatever you want. And I'm happy to give all of that to you in a private setting right after this hearing is done. Now, that's fine, and I was excited to hear it, and I'm glad that he said it. But do you feel that tips the hat for the shell game for Lockheed to suddenly empty warehouses, or anybody else that may have?
They're not that stupid. I assure you, they're not that stupid. But the way it went down, though, was slightly different, though, Jimmy, and I loved it and they knew the questions they were going to ask, and I think they anticipated what was going to happen. And this is what he did. He stepped over the line just a little bit, but this was the question. I think it came from Mace, and she said, "Well, David, Mr. Grush, you said that we have these vehicles, we have these bodies. Do you happen to know where they are? Do you know the locations of where they are?" And he said, yes. He was supposed to say I cannot discuss this in open session, but he said yes, which he now has confirmed that he knows where the locations are. And I'm sure some people over the Pentagon went, oh, man, why'd you do that? But I can tell you in private session. And that definitely created a problem, which is why I believe when they requested that skiff afterwards to have that private session, the DOD said, I don't think so. Nah, we don't have a skiff available. They're all booked right now, okay? Because they did not want that information going to that particular group of people at that time. But it still went out to the world. So there's craft, there's bodies. We got a fella here that knows where they're located, and he is prepared to tell member of Congress is that. And so, again, I mean, we're so close to like disclosure in a sense. It's fascinating, but we can't go there yet. But keep in mind, this happened on the 26th. Something else more profound, I believe, happened on the 14th. 39 days after Coulthard interviews Grush, a man who had a really big problem because he was the Senate Majority Leader and knew that the Intel Committee had a really big problem because they're the ones sponsoring this legislation and it's moving us along very nicely to getting where we need to go. And suddenly this happens. What do? I mean, believe me, just pretending it didn't happen isn't going to work. Coming out with some nonsense is not going to work. So he thought about it. He got Mike Rounce to work with him. And over that 39 days, they come up with an additional 50 pages of legislation to go with the 20 that was sort of in the initial language. And they put a lot of time in this. And they basically threw the end zone pass, right? They went for the end zone with the long, deep one. They put in the entire infrastructure, the rest of the infrastructure needed, right, to achieve what they had sought out to do from the beginning. And that is create everything we need to have for the day after the president confirms the ET presence. All of this has had nothing to do with trying to find this out. They've known about this for decades. It has nothing to do with that. And so a lot of people are going, well, why are they doing it? I don't understand. They're not doing it to find out anything. They're doing it because if the president is to disclose, the next day, It's going to be crazy. You're going to have everybody wanting everything, and they have no laws. They've got no, they haven't got a program set up. They've got nothing. But soon they will have everything needed as they can go right to work to start bringing things out in the post-disclosure world. This has all been about disclosure from the get-go. And it was going along fine until David Grush kind of preemptively disclosed. And so this was something that it's a problem for the Intel Committee, but the Intel Committee was not, they couldn't respond to it. It wasn't like they could, how are they going to react to David Grush? That's a huge mistake. Chuck Schumer, for the first time, who is a political animal, he is the Senate Majority Leader. The Senate's a Democrat. He's a Democrat, and so everything he does is basically political. And for the first time, he steps into this issue. He'd always stayed back, and drops this language into the bill. And the one piece that he knew was going to get the most attention, it was going to get not the most attention of the press, but of the people inside the truth embargo, and in particular, the massive government defense contractors who were tied into this through the USAPs. He said, we're declaring eminent domain over all non-human tech and bodies. And a lot of people don't understand eminent domain, so they got all kind of in a kerfuffle. But what it means is the government has the right to take it. Doesn't mean it will take it. And if it does take it, it needs to compensate you. Okay, that wasn't mentioned, but that's the way eminent domain works. And then even if it takes it, it may come back to you in a joint venture or whatever. But the fundamental reason for declaring eminent domain is because you believe with what they have, whether it's land, whether it's water rights, or whether it's ETs and ET tech, that thing that they have needs to first and foremost serve the public good, not just a corporate bottom line. Now, these people in the defense contractor world have been paid billions of dollars to do all this work for decades, and they've had to sit on it. They couldn't cash it in. They couldn't create businesses from it because that would blow the truth embargo up. So they've been sitting patiently, waiting for the day that they could cash in. And suddenly the Senate Majority Leader says, oh, by the way, the government owns it. Well, boom. That was a punch in the face, a deliberate punch in the face, which was part of an absolute masterful chess move. This is one of these moves. You're watching a game of grandmasters, and things are getting really interesting. You're not sure what's going to happen. And one of them makes a move of the lifetime, and you're going, oh, my God. And they talk about it for years to come. It was that kind of move. Most people haven't figured out that. They're just taking it day by day. And so he announces this. He announces the eminent domain, knowing exactly what's going to happen. And so starting in July 14, going forward, the managers of the truth embargo and the defense contractors have got X amount of time to respond. And they could not sit this out. They have stayed back on all these other laws. They go, fine. None of them threatening us. No big deal. But this did. And so he forced them out of cover. What they had to do is they had to go to their intermediaries. They couldn't come forward directly and say, you need to get in touch with this member of Congress and that member of Congress and that senator and so forth. And which ones were they going to get in touch with? The ones receiving the most amount of donations for their campaigns from the defense contractors, which happened to include Mike Turner and Mike Rogers and others, right? Meaning, yeah, you get millions of dollars from us, and this eminent domain thing, that's got to go. And so thus began this pushback. Most of it was silent. We didn't know what was going on. But it was big, it was intense, and they were serious. And they might not have succeeded, but eventually somebody else jumped into the fray, and that was Mitch McConnell. Why? I don't know. Was it on behalf of defense contractors, or was it on behalf of those in the military intelligence complex, the national security structure, that absolutely oppose disclosure because they honestly believe it is the wrong thing to do? Whatever. But when McConnell steps in, looks like they're going to get some action. So the battle goes on. We're trying to watch. Everybody's getting upset. And ultimately, what happens? Almost certainly what Schumer expected. They strip all of the power out of the bill. The eminent domain, the subpoena power, that was a big deal, that was going to be given to the panel, right, the UAP panel, as well as certain members of committees who were in oversight positions. The classification status that they would also get, meaning they would have the highest classification access, these individuals, and could go anywhere they wanted. Want to go down 50 levels underneath Area 51? No problem. Take you right down. And if they won't take them down, they call in the MPs and start arresting people, right? And they took away the UAP panel to be appointed by the president. Basically stripped it of all the powers. but they left the essence of the bill because he really had no choice. If they tried to pull that out, it would have been a riot, right? And so they left the essence of the bill, which is, this stuff is going to come out, it's going to go forward, it's going to end up in the National Archives. Now we have up to 25 years to do that, which is not as bad as people think, and of course we can postpone it. And most of the control is in the hands of the people that have it. And so basically, it satisfies the process. It protects, but it mostly protects the insiders, and it does seem to maybe offer the prospect that they can string this out for another 4, 5, 10, 15 years. But no, because what they don't know is that when he made that move, he put their king in check, mate in two. They were mated and didn't know it. All right. And this brings to mind, I hope we have enough time. It's a quick story. This brings to mind a movie that is one of my favorite. It has one of the most significant opening scenes, greatest opening scenes of any film ever, right up there with 2001 Space Odyssey. And the movie I'm talking about is Gladiator. And I'm saying most people who are watching and listening tonight have seen Gladiator. And at the very beginning, you have the Roman legions confronting the last of the great Germanic hordes. And it's the final battle to take over that area. And they're all getting ready to go at it. And the hordes are up in the trees, and they come down to the tree line, and they start pounding their swords and their shields. They're beating their chests. The leader of the Germanic group gets up on a rock, and he's screaming and pounding his chest. And at that point, General Maximus Meridius's chief lieutenant, Quintus, says to Maximus, he says, people should know when they've been conquered. And Maximus says to Quintus, would you, Quintus? Would I? And that's the point that I'm about to make. The truth embargo is finished. It's toast. It's done. The battle is basically over. It's just the cleaning up that has to do. And I believe that the defense contractors and all of those the executives there, when that amendment was announced, they stood up in their chairs at their executive dining room over the same thing over at the DOD dining room, and they stood up and they looked at that screen and they started pounding their chest, rattling their swords, right? Meaning, oh no, you're not, right? No way. And in fact, they'd already lost, whether they knew it or not, because it was mate in two. And so he smokes them out. They have to come forward and challenge the bill. And so what has just happened in a very short amount of time? David Grush, in public forum and under oath in the Congress, confirms there's a non-human intelligence and a non-human technology in the hands of the United States government, meaning multiple crashed vehicles. Okay. Schumer then confirms it when he comes out and says, we want eminent domain over the non-human technology and the non-human bodies. That confirms it. And then when the pushback comes against the eminent domain, that confirms it again. Okay. And so at this point, one move from checkmate. And so that happens in a short amount of time. And so where we are now is the last move. And there's only one more move to checkmate, and that is the Senate hearings, the ones that we've been promised, the ones that there are several dozen witnesses ready to testify. They got their choice, and everyone's a David Grush, all right? And the Senate Intel Committee, no disrespect intended, is not a House subcommittee. 1 week of that testimony with 100 million people watching, and it's game over. The president,
for sure.
And confirm it.
Okay, so now let's back up before we move forward.
Mm-hmm.
The list and the information that Grush referred to in that hearing was also presented and given to the IG when he applied for the whistleblower status.
Oh, yeah. And the information was also given to the Intel Committee. Absolutely.
Well, but let's get before that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's not like this was just some big surprise. And the Inspector General's office is sitting on those private corporations, branches of the military, the locations, the names of not only recovered craft and backwards engineering programs, but possible bodies on ice somewhere, and maybe some of them alive. Right? That list is out there, floating in the IG's office, as well as those with the security clearance on the committee. Not everybody's got a clearance, right? But those that do also had access to those corporations. Do you think that the funding, because these fall in different districts, okay, all right, and then these guys are funding this. And do you think it took some of them by surprise, where now they have to go and investigate potentially an employer in their district?
Well, let me soften that a little bit. Grush had been known. He'd been out there for 2 years dealing with this issue until he finally came forward. It's not necessary. It wouldn't have necessarily been required that he give the IG's office all of that information, right? He was simply going there to get the harassment stopped, and he needed to show a legitimate case of harassment. And so I can't say what's in the hands of the IG office, but the fact that Grush knew about the e-technology, oh yeah, and I assure you that somebody went and told Lockheed Martin and some of the other people, there's this guy that's been told about the e-technology and he's cruising around. And so they may not have been surprised when Grush gives the interview. What surprised them is what Schumer did. They didn't see that move coming, right? It's like when the legions launched all those fire arrows into the trees and set them all on fire, right? In Gladiator. They may not have, maybe they didn't know that the Romans had fire. I don't know, but standing amongst a bunch of trees, not a good idea. Did not work out. So that is what surprised them. And they were so surprised that they made a very bad blunder. They boldly came forward and tried to strangle the bill in its crib. And everybody's watching this happening. They go, well, there's only one reason you're doing that, to make money, right? Bottom line, shareholder stuff, right? And of course, your district getting the funding, whatever the hell. In other words, it wasn't a good look for them. In other words, they were forced to make another bad move, which now sets the stage for the final moves. Now, I see no reason. There's nothing that has just happened prevents the Intel Committee from having those witnesses in front of them under oath in January. Nothing. And they should have that. And if they do, they set up the president to passively come forward, not as an aggressor, not as a politician, but as an observer and witness to those hearings like everybody else, and say, I've talked to my people, I've talked it over, we are convinced. There is a non-human presence here. I think there's some things that I don't know about. There's plenty you want to know about. And we're going to get together on Monday morning and start dealing with that, and then walk right back down Cross Hall, because there's no way he's taking any questions after that. And that's disclosure. So the last move, it's mate and two. The last move is the hearings. All right. And the final move is actually not a move. That's when the king is turned over. And that's what President Biden will be doing that day. He is the king, and he's turning over the king and saying, that was a fantastic game. Let's shake hands. That is where things are right now. And that is what I mean when I say, because unless you've been following this for years and years, unless you've been focusing on the politics for years and years, unless you've tried to see the total picture and not get into the granular stuff and the little things, which is what journalists do. I get that. You're not going to, unless you're watching the game at a distance and seeing the moves, you're not going to see it. And that means the contractor sitting over there holding that tech, counting on making that money, got their people in Congress working for them, no problem. They're not seeing it coming. And so they have lost, and they don't know it, Jimmy. It's over, and they don't know it. But pretty soon they are going to know it. And one last part of the analogy. What is in the modern era now representing the Roman legions in Gladiator? Okay.
This is the third Gladiator reference. We're the drinking game starts now. If we get to a fourth, everybody gets a shot.
The last one, Jimmy.
I was going to go get my alien vodka. You remember that alien vodka?
I remember. I think I don't. Did I have some? I might have. I'm not sure. We have to have dinner again, Jimmy. So look, here's the last analogy. What are the Roman legions in this scenario? The Roman legions is approximately 4 to 5 billion manned army, men and women, right? on the internet and their divisions, which are about 1 billion strong each. Social media areas, right? Social media, 1 billion each. That is the Roman legions of this time. And if they want to come down out of those woods, they're going to be going up against all 4 billion. And they're not just people, they're people with internet, they're people with ability to interact with each other, to investigate, they can fact check, and they will cut them to shreds if they decide to take this on, and they will lose, just like the German horde did in Gladiator. It's that simple. I won't say another one. I'll switch to another movie.
No, man, I'm ready for a shot. But okay, Stephen, let's back up one more. We're going to do this a lot tonight.
Mm-hmm.
Is Grush has stated, and I believe this to be true, but I'm basing this more on the future, that he felt comfortable enough coming forward after informing the IG, getting his whistleblower status because of the Gillibrand Amendment. Do you think that that is enough for the other whistleblowers that have been nervous or reticent about speaking about this? Is the Gillibrand Amendment from 2022 strong enough to convince somebody and their better half, right, that this is a safe move?
Oh, I wish it was that simple, Jimmy. It's not. First of all, the Gillibrand Act was not a whistleblower. We already have a whistleblower act. We have 2 of them. In other words, covering everything. Anybody in the government that is coming forward saying there's illegal stuff going on here, and I'm coming forward, and you start to get hassled and bothered, you can go and get protection under the Whistleblower Act. Doesn't always work, but it's what we got. It was a witness protection. Witness, not like witness protection in the criminal world where they put you in a motel with 3 FBI guys. It's witness protection in the senses for those who were coming forward under the auspices of the act, meaning we want you to come forward. We have information we need to get. If anybody internally has a problem with that, the person's breaking the law. We're saying that's a no-no. So they were trying to make it easier for witnesses just to come forward within the channels, like Rush had done, right? And not be hassled, not whistleblower act, okay? And in fact, we've got to stop calling these people whistleblowers. The only people that are whistleblowers are people that have publicly said, I'm a whistleblower, the government's breaking the law, and I may be even breaking the law telling you about it. Almost all of them are not that. Nobody wants to be a whistleblower. Let me tell you, it is a bad idea. It is a tough road. He's still getting death threats, okay, in case you were wondering, all right? What do? Well, you just go public and take care of yourself. You do not want to be a whistleblower. But witnesses, yeah. And so we want witnesses to come forward, and that bill helped. And they've been coming forward. They've been going to members of Congress. They've been going to people in Arrow, or at least certainly, I think Arrow. And so they are coming forward. We've got more witnesses than we know what to do with. And maybe a couple of them might be defined as whistleblowers, but until we know that for sure, they're witnesses. Okay? So it wasn't the act, but other witnesses were more comfortable in coming forward, and they have. In terms of
isn't that semantics, though?
No,
isn't that semantics?
No.
Because he did say it was the protection from the last NDAA that helped him make his decision to come forward. Now, did he say whistleblower? Did he call himself a whistleblower? I'd have to go back. I don't think.
Oh, he absolutely did. He called himself a whistleblower several times. Remember, he's given multiple interviews. He's given multiple interviews more since.
Yeah, I'm referring to the House. But yes, in other interviews, he has definitely used those words.
But he was referred to as a whistleblower in the articles. But so he. But
Gillibrand, in the amendment, they did not use the word whistleblower. No.
So, look, David, it's very possible that just offering witness protection for internal witnesses coming forward as part of the process to get things loosened up might have given him some additional confidence to make this rather risky maneuver. And so he's saying that, but I have to say that he probably shouldn't do that, because he's not properly representing the situation, and somebody else is going, well, I'm going to be a whistleblower too, because I'm protected by that. No, you're not, right? If you're a whistleblower, you're protected under the Government Whistleblower Act, which is a little iffy, and you're still going to go through hell. All the Whistleblower Act does is say that what happens to you and any hassles like that is not legal. they're not going to put 55 FBI agents around you 24 hours a day. They're simply saying, hey, it's not illegal, so it'll mitigate it. But if somebody wants you to taken out, you'll be taken out. And you could be crucified on the internet, and you can have death threats slipped under your door with no name attached to them. So trust me, you don't want to be a whistleblower. We want to get disclosure. We want to get everything out of the secret world to the people in a controlled way over time, but it'll start right away, and into the archives without anybody else having to be a whistleblower. That's it. That's the way
Now,
to do it.
the defense budget that was passed last week, what were the highlights for you moving forward? And we'll come back after the break and pick this up.
Here's the highlight. Here's the highlight. Look, the bill was passed. And it had the essence in it, which is important. The essence is essentially, the fact they took all the power away. I get it. But again, they don't understand that they've lost. Okay. And so, but here is the thing that really happened. And some people didn't know this. But shortly after the bill was finally, I think it was signed at that point. It was signed. It was done. Schumer made another move. He goes on the Senate floor along with Mike Rounds and gives a 7-minute colloquy to the camera. Now, understand, there's virtually nobody in the room. They do this all the time. They're just getting it on the record. They're in the Senate chamber. That means it goes on the record, and it's going to be filmed, and everybody's going to see it. And so for 7 minutes, he talks about what just happened. He's disappointed. He gets a little political. He kind of indicates that Republicans are the principal people that were pushing back. Then Mike steps in. They go over and over again, emphasizing how this was based upon the model that was used to deal with the controversy of the assassination of Kennedy. The record's there, which was a mistake. They shouldn't have done that, but whatever. And they did that over and over again. But along the way, and this is interesting, in that 7 minutes, he refers to the fact that information has been kept from the Congress by these entities that have this tech and so forth, and that's illegal. And again, nothing that he is doing, or Rounds for that matter, is just off the cuff. Everything is carefully planned, and he is playing a high-level chess game with very big stakes. And so when he says that, he basically just became Steve Greer for a moment, because Steve Greer has been saying the whole damn thing's illegal, and has encouraged people to come forward as whistleblowers, because since the whole damn thing is illegal, come forward, do whatever you want, you'll have protection, and nobody can come back at you. I don't go that far. But what he did, but by saying that, he puts the people inside on notice that at least the Senate Majority Leader thinks it's illegal. That doesn't mean we're going to cause a fuss. It just means I am on record saying that, which means that if you want to be a whistleblower, and I don't suggest that you do have a legitimate basis in the eyes of Chuck Schumer, one of the most powerful men in government. I don't think he's encouraging whistleblowers, but he is sort of saying, look, and if you want to be a witness, but not a whistleblower, the fact that you know it's illegal, though that's not the basis on which you're coming forward, it makes it a little more important that you do something. And so he sent a message again. He sent that message with the eminent domain. He just sent a message again in that little 7-minute statement. And then here is checkmate. Here is where the king gets turned over, right? In fact, I spoke inappropriately before. The last move is the president coming forward and confirming. The king gets turned over when? Because once the president has confirmed the ET presence, which will be immediately followed by heads of state all over the world, bang, bang, bing, bing, boom, boom. I think Mexico will be second, just a hunch. And so now you've got 20, 30 countries. They've all confirmed it. Everybody's on fire. At that point, the Senate is going to reintroduce the UAP Disclosure Act, word for word, as it was originally written, as a standalone bill. And who do you think in the House or Senate is going to vote against it? Can you imagine that? This is the post-disclosure era. The pre-ET presence is fully confirmed by the heads of state. Everybody's on fire. And now they're trying to put this bill through that gives the power to get this information out in a controlled way. And they're going to vote against it? No, it goes right through and gets done. King over, game one. That's where things are going.
Now, today I made this announcement. You may not have seen this. It's fine, and we can talk more about it after the break.
Sure.
But this is in direct reference of what we're talking about. But this is the rest of the world, and now, and it's specifically a university in Germany. A new study calls for Earthlings to prepare for an encounter with extraterrestrial intelligence.
Sure.
And it examines the possible social consequences of such contact. And the consequences of first contact strongly depend on the way it takes place. And this is all according to the paper, which is peer-reviewed and now published. The paper offers a view that first contact with alien life poses considerable risk for humanity. Additionally, a first contact event could also take place without being culturally recognized. In other words, not in the first person. The new research paper is led by Andreas Anton of the Institute for Frontier Areas of Psychology and Mental Health in Freiburg, Germany. The prospect of an encounter scenario, the paper points out, raises an important question whether the alien technology is controlled by a biological life form or an artificial intelligence. The paper concludes by acknowledging that with the more we know about the universe and the further we penetrate into the cosmos through our own research activities, the more likely it is that we will be confronted with alien civilizations, their signals, and their legacies. This is where now, looking at Congress and looking at the Senate and Washington, D.C. and legacy media, we can talk about all of that. But we've never really had the universities, the conventional academics, right?
Yeah.
Looking at this in a very logical way.
Yeah, they've avoided it like the plague, but they knew about it. Right. I tell you, there have been plenty of people in our university systems in the science and astrophysics department that knew there was an ET presence 60 years ago. So in terms of the academic community getting into this now, of course, everybody's going to get into it. But when they get into it, they're going to be like that horse. You know the one at the horse races? The one you put the money on, right? They're coming down the stretch, and this horse is like 25 lengths back, right? He can barely see him, but he finally, that's the university system. And so
wasn't that the opening scene? That was the opening scene of Gladiator, right?
No, that was not the opening scene of Gladiator. That was the Kentucky Derby of 1974. The horse. Look,
Secretariat. Okay, gotcha.
And so this study is talking about when first contact happens. Look, I don't want to, no disrespect to Anton, but first contact happened about 15,000 years ago. Went on for decades of the millennium. They were treated as gods, but that was first contact. And as far as the modern era, well, there's been some first contact in the bedrooms of houses all over the freaking planet. And so first contact is a little bit off there. And so they just don't know what they're talking about, but they're trying. They're trying to get caught up, and one day they will. But the universities, of all of the institutions in this country, the universities are last. I mean, completely last. Not a single properly accredited courses on this subject in the entire 76 years in 5,000 colleges and universities that have had millions of professors go through them. Their attitude was this: we're not touching right at the 10-foot pole. We got some grants. Everything is good here. We don't need to go there. No problem. Right. We know, and it's, you all work it out. And when somebody in the university system did do something, well, let's just say it didn't go well. And let's talk about David Jacobs, right? Years and years ago, I remember talking to David. And I said, David, they let you teach this one course there. You're a history professor, but you're allowed to teach this one course on, I think it was possibly contact ET. Always had, I think, many kids that wanted to be in it. And that was it. And I said, well, that's kind of cool. And he looked at me and he said, he was an associate professor. This is many years ago. He said, I'll never be a professor, though. I'll never be a professor. And he retired not too long ago as an associate professor. As far as John Mack, hang on. John Mack, as academic as you could get, a Pulitzer Prize winner. They tried to run him out of Harvard. And one day they're going to answer for that, okay? The university system in this country on this issue conducted the most egregious intellectual failure in the history of the human race. It transcends the Catholic Church resistance to the sun-centered universe, way past that. I mean, come on. There were some Catholic priests there, not a lot of science going on. They had a lot of text. Let's don't ruffle the feathers. This is a university system in the 20th century with billions of dollars of funding and all kinds of science teachers and science stuff. And they just said, we're not going to touch this. We don't want that kind of university system. We want a university system that has the guts to stand up to the government. If they won't, let's replace them with people that will. And so that is what I'm trying to say when I'm referring to Mr. Antone and the fact that they're decided in this university are going to talk about the possibilities of first contact. They don't know what the hell they're talking about. All right. And there are some scientists of note who in this country who are, how would you say, also behind the curve and have been for decades. But recently, they're kind of trying to catch up, like that horse in the 25 links out. I think, if I'm not mistaken, Neil deGrasse Tyson just a couple of days ago said something about the fact that we need to look into, I think, this human tech thing, something like that, or something needs to come out. And let's just say that was new for Dr. Tyson. Okay. But I assure you, he won't be the only person and the only scientist that very soon is going to be starting trying to catch up with those pack of horses, right? And try to get up on this, right? And try to forget everything they ever said, everything they ever wrote. No, I just didn't know. I mean, I what can I say? I'm a human. I'm fallible. And I fear this will happen after they have kind of caught up. They will then step forward one more step and say, and given my credentials and gravitas, I think I may be one of the most knowledgeable people in the world on the extraterrestrial issue. And I would be happy to accept the chair of extraterrestrial studies at MIT if it's available. I think you'll see that. Yeah. And that's what the Hollywood Disclosure. Yeah.
Well, we'll talk about the Hollywood Disclosure initiative that you put together when we come back after the break. But I did want to make this one comment. When I read the press release on this paper out of Freiburg today, I looked at it two ways, and yes, there I see the warnings for humanity. I see that. Be prepared. But you know what? I kind of read between the lines there. Because when you make a direct reference to our research and our ability to look at now so far out into the cosmos and gather this information, that he's also speaking to, and the other contributors to the paper, that the people that are going to be sitting in these radio telescopes or monitoring the data coming back from the James Webb or TESS, or what have you, when they see something for the first time, that they don't freak out. Because it's a Pandora's box issue, right? Be careful, right, of what you wish for here, because you're going to flip that lid open. You're looking for it, but what are you going to do when you actually see it?
Well, I hope
that's the way I took it.
These are grown people with PhDs, and I have a number of people that I know that have had to deal with ETs walking into their room through the wall of the bedroom. And
sure.
So they've managed to deal with that. So I'm sure these fine PhDs are going to deal with the fact that, wait a minute, we've actually got a signal from like 50 light years away. You mean there's civilizations out there? Hey, just go talk to your cousin Vinny, right? He's been abducted since he was 5.
Yeah, but Tyson, Neil deGrasse Tyson is going to be put in an oversized shirt with really long sleeves. I don't think he can handle it. I don't. I think the white van pulls up in front of his house.
No. He's already. Look, Neil deGrasse Tyson has known about the ET presence probably for decades. Look, every single president has known about the ET presence. Every single one. You do not get to be president. I'm not saying that he was given the guided tour of all the facilities or anything else. I'm just saying that somebody credible tipped them off at minimum. Right? When you're the most powerful person in the world, there are people lined up to tip you off with information.
Yeah, it's got to be in the binder. It's got to be in the binder.
No, it could be nothing but a conversation at a cocktail party after, a joint chief has too many cocktails. It doesn't matter. And powerful people, very wealthy people like Bezos, like Elon Musk, I guarantee you they know there's an ET presence. There will be numbers of people that will be dying to let them know. so that they would have that important piece of information, and he might get a job at SpaceX. And so they have chosen to take the positions that they have chosen to do in their best interest. Hey, nothing wrong with that. I'm just trying to pull the curtain down a little bit. And the whole truth embargo has created all of these mirrors and mazes and stuff, and they want you to just get all confused. I just smash the mirrors, go right through the maze, screw it, and go right to the point. NASA
I've blown past the commercial. I do have to get to it, but
the commercial. Oh God, don't charge me.
Yeah,
I don't want to get a check.
Got to pay the bills. The idea, those PhDs, those types of theoretical physicists have a huge fan base that are atheists, right? Total skeptics, don't believe in anything except for ones and zeros and things that can be proven, and the stuff that comes out of Tyson's mouth and others, right?
Well, look, I don't want to. Look,
hold on. Let me get to my point, though.
Okay.
What do if Neil deGrasse flips and goes, okay, I've known about this for years. Now it's been brought out, and yes, we are not alone, and we have flying saucers here on this planet right now. He says that to his billion followers, they're gonna crack. I mean, they're gonna lose it, because they blindly listen to everything that he says. So that's another thing that needs to be dealt with here. It's not just our community or you or me, Steve. There's a lot of influence that Tyson and Dawkins and others have.
Look, first of all, Jimmy, don't go into public relations. That's not your area of expertise. He's not going to say it that way. He's not going to say it that way, I assure you. But the much more important point.
He would, though. He's pretty cavalier. He's pretty cocky.
If he's got anybody advising him at all, he will handle it in the best possible way to minimize the public relations problems. But this is important point, a very important point. Look, the list of institutions and people that have public relations problems post-disclosure is a very, very long list. Okay. One thing that will mitigate their pain is that the enormous interest and focus on the reality, the truth of it, and what it means and where it could go in the post-disclosure world is going to capture most people's attention. And so you're not going to be, setting up a guillotine and gathering people. I'm not going to do that. But still, huge public relations problems. Whether you're NASA, whether you're the Air Force, whether the U.S. government in general, whether you're a former Joint Chiefs, whatever, if you're a top scientist and you knew what... And that's what happens when you have a propaganda lie that lasts 76 years. Okay. Mm-hmm. And on all these vested interests, like the entire university system, has got to go along with it because they just don't want the hassle of not going along with it. And so they're serving their interests. And then one day the truth comes out. Now, one of the reasons that what we're doing leading up to disclosure, all of this last 3 years, particularly, all the laws, setting up Arrow and everything else we're doing, NASA setting up a UFO study group, which I think is the funniest thing in the world. But the point is they set up something, all right, is that by doing the right thing now, which we could have done in 48 under Eisenhower, could have done it in 53 under Eisenhower, could have done it after the Cold War ended. We had several opportunities, but we didn't do it. So, but if we do the right thing now, even though it's kind of a ruse, right? They can't really tell you the truth, because if they did, then that would screw up the whole thing. But if you do the right, once everybody knows, they're going to say, you did the right thing. You got things set up. You've been righteous for a couple of years, so we forgive you. We forgive you. We're not going to be too hard on you.
You are a hippie. You are a hippie. And okay. So James Fox is listening. I'm just going to let you know right now.
That's all right.
He just texted me. And he says, Jimmy, I'm listening. Love you, man. Tell Steve I said hello, but tell Steve that you're right. I'm just telling you, it's right here. I love
James like a brother. I know I never get to see him. He hides out. He always lives in a house somewhere off very far.
Yeah,
he keeps to himself.
He's doing well. So let's take a break right here. You just stay right there, Stephen. Okay. All right.
Okay. I'm here.
This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Stephen Bassett. We are talking about 2023 and Disclousre and taking a look ahead at 2024. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Stay with us.
My job is not to preach. My job is to take you on this journey.
In a state of passion, nothing negative can happen.
That it's the moons of those planets that would have life.
Sometimes I see, these energies also in your field.
It is our passion and our pleasure.
Hi, everybody. Jimmy Church here. Very special announcement, and that is we are shipping Fade to Black t-shirts again. It's been almost 2 years. We did a full upgrade to the website, so you can head over to jimmychurchradio.com. It's all simple to do, and it's right there. Remember, we broadcast 4 nights a week, Monday through Thursday. We bring you the best, the brightest, the most knowledgeable and amazing guests, the best conversations. We do that 4 nights a week. We also do 4 days a week. We broadcast the news, and we do that live too as well. It's not a one-man show. I do it with website support. I do it with producers. I do it with writers and artists. All contribute to the show. The best way to help support what we do here is with the Fade to Black t-shirt. And you can get your Fade to Black t-shirt one of 2 ways. First, go to jimmychurchradio.com, order a shirt. It's really that simple. You're going to get a tracking number, it's going to get shipped, and it's going to get autographed. The second way to get a shirt is with a Game Changer membership. Now, the Game Changer membership not only includes a free t-shirt, but you get a private email to me. You get unlimited commercial-free downloads. You have full access to the website, and everything includes free shipping, and everything is autographed. So help support the show. Get your Fade to Black t-shirt today. The links are below. You can just go to jimmychurchradio.com, and it's right on the website. So there you go. I'm Jimmy Church, Fade to Black. I'm so excited that I just have one thing to say. Go Beckley Teppy. River Moon Coffee, makers of the Fade to Black blend. Truly the best coffee on planet Earth. Just visit rivermoonwellness.com or their Amazon store. It's all simple to do. You can check out the Fade to Black blend, the Game Changer blend, or any of their Black Moon Wellness products. It's the only coffee I drink. It is the best, and it's Doc. Again, rivermoonwellness.com. All All right. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Stephen Bassett is with us. I just put up 2 links for everybody in the chat, and those are the PDFs of the NDAA that was just passed and the new UAP bill, courtesy of this young man right here, Stephen Bassett. Thank you for those links, Stephen, and I've got them up in the chat. The next step up is the chatters going around about a hearing in January. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. What have you got for us, and what are the efforts that you are involved with? Oh, you're muted. Hold on, I'll unmute you. I got you. No, don't you unmute. Okay, you've muted your mic on your end. Okay.
Okay.
There you.
Yes. To me, the way the history is supposed to unfold here is pretty straightforward. Clearly, the hearing in the Senate is what we've been aiming for all along. There's no reason not to have it now. Plenty of witnesses are available. These are very strong witnesses. They can pick and choose, and they'd better pay their airfare in their hotel, because I've heard that they haven't done that in some of these initial briefings. You pay their airfare and you pay their hotel. And so when those mostly men, all military, sit down and tell Grush-like stories one after another for about 5 days, morning, afternoon, 2, 4 times 5, 20. 20's fine. It's ball game. It's over. And they know it. I think a lot of people know it. And so does the Senate Intel Committee. The thing is there something that might or might not prevent it? Well, there are some reasons that it could be delayed, but that is the ball game. All right. So we got to have it. So I'm an activist, and I get to do my activist thing, and this is great. So what I did is, about a week ago, I launched the shiftstorm.org. Now you've got to get that F in there, okay? It's shiftstorm.org, and it's straightforward, and it's cool, okay? It's basically a tweet storm, and I think a lot of people actually are on Twitter don't understand this, but most people do. And there, by the way, is 1 billion and some people on Twitter. Anybody in the world that's on Twitter can do this. You don't have to be a citizen even. This is a fun thing for everyone. Here's what you do. I have on shiftstorm.org put the 3 heroes here, 3 of the heroes. There are heroes in the House, but they're not the focus. In the House, the heroes are Tim Burchett, Anna Paulina Luna, and Nancy Mace, these congressmen. These are heroes. Let me tell you, feel free to contact them and tell them how wonderful they are. But we're talking about the 3 people most capable of holding that hearing. And it's Chairman Mark Warner, ranking chair Marco Rubio, and Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. Schumer, Warner, and Rubio. New York, Virginia, and Florida. These have the power to do it. The Supreme Court cannot make them hold a hearing. The president cannot make them hold a hearing, right? They can do it, and that's it. They can lean on them, try, but they can't make them happen. They do it. If they want it, you get it. And so what we're doing is this. You go open your Twitter, you select a tweet. I have published the handles for these 3 gentlemen. Everybody in Congress has a Twitter account. What can I say, right? And they all have a handle. They don't have DMs, no DMs, but they have a handle. And so what you do is you Twitter tag them. So you go at Senator Schumer. Senator, we really want hearings on this subject in January. We would love the effort you did on that bill. It's fantastic. You're my hero, but we must have these hearings. Thank you so much. Bing, done. And you tweet it. And it goes right into the notification box of Senator Schumer. This is the box where stuff that's tagged to you accumulates. And they have staffers that watch that box. Why? Because that's where they find out what people are saying about their boss out there in the hinterland. And so what will happen? And we want to put 100,000 messages into these boxes, right? These Twitter notification boxes, is that the staffer will go over and go in there, and there'll be this string of hundreds, if not thousands, of messages saying, we want the hearings in January. We want them. And they're going to call up the boss and say, you need to check the Twitter account there, check the notification, because something's going on here. And then the senator goes over, opens it up, and there they are. Boom, just raining down. We want to get 100,000 in by the end of the year. Hey, there's 1.5 billion on Twitter, okay? And you could each do 10 for each guy. Just make sure they're different. You can send the same message to all three senators, but don't send the same message to the same senator over again. You got to change it. But send as many as you want. Fill up their box. This is a Twitter tagging, good trouble, activist effort to try to convince them to hold the hearings. Now, I've also put up their email form. Nobody gives their email address out anymore. They have forms, okay? And so you fill out the form, put some information in, then you give them a nice message, and you send it, and it goes into the email box of one of the staffers whose job is to check the emails. And if they got, 1,000 of these or 2,000 of these, they would say, call the boss, you need to check the emails. We're getting all these emails. But I have to point out something. If you don't happen to be in Florida, Virginia, or New York, and you want to send an email to the senator from these states, then when you fill out the information, you're going to have an address that is an address and a zip code that is in that state. And if you don't have an address like that, then the message won't go through. Just saying that. That's all I'm saying. You got to have an address in the state and the zip code, or the message won't go through. And so they're going to get a bunch of email messages. We do not want storm calls. We do not want a call storm. If a couple of people make a call, make it short, say nice things, say, I really want the hearings, but I love the work you're doing, and that's it. And then drop out. Don't do that. No, we don't need to. Focus on the tweets and some emails. This is shiftstorm.org. It's in play. I've already mentioned it on 50 podcasts. I think we got a shot here to make a difference. And of course, you want to continue it into January, right? Because if we can get the hearings even as late as early February, we're going to be okay. And now, Jimmy, I have to go dark here and explain why we have to get the hearings in January. All right. There's two reasons. They're both serious. Okay. The first one, in case anybody hasn't been paying attention, there are many futurists and pundits and others who claim that we are in the most dangerous times ever in our history. And I happen to agree with them. The list of things that could go incredibly bad at any moment has simply gotten longer and longer. All right. It's not good. If any one of these things were to happen, the whole disclosure thing is shoved completely off the table. God knows when we'll get to revisit it. What's on that list? If some idiot fires off a nuclear shell in Ukraine-Russia war, that is a nuclear war at that moment. It only takes one. That puts Europe in DEFCON 1. It just means one nuke. Then the question is, will it grow? Don't know. But one nuke, that's DEFCON 1 in Europe, okay? We're in DEFCON 3 in the US now, usually 4. I think we're 3, but we'd immediately go to 2. And so at that point, we're on the verge of possibly the end of civilization. And of course, that's not good. But we have more problems. We've had another blow up in the Middle East regarding a 2,000-year-old blood feud that was never going to end. It's one of the worst ever. Recently, one of the participants in that feud has put out a message that every American on the planet is now a target and are claiming they have plans. Well, we've seen what they've done in the past. They may try to outdo that. How could they outdo it? Well, I have a secret for you that some of you may have already guessed. We had 86,000 nukes in 9 countries back in the 80s, and then we finally got it down to 25,000, and there was all kinds of other programs and things, and everybody, they want you to believe that all of the nuclear material and all the weapons are absolutely accounted for. I don't think too many people actually believe that. They just don't want to talk about that. And so the concern of a non-state operator nuclear event, even a modest-sized nuke, has been huge for years, but it's simply not talked about. It's in the movies, it's in the books, it's in the series. Oh God, yeah. But no, it's not in real life. Wrong. And if you think a tactical shell being launched fired off in the Ukraine war is a problem, imagine a non-state operator nuke event where a van is driven down to the center of a city, pick one, and blows the middle of that city up. And then the country doesn't know who to attack because either nobody takes credit for it or 500 terrorist organizations take credit for it. Who knows what goes there? And plus, we've got a whole city that's not populated. It's not good. That is the kind of thing we don't want. But I can go on. China could finally say, hey, there's chaos in the world. It's time to get those microchips over in Taiwan, and they go and take it. And then we're going, we're going to have to send the aircraft carriers. And what else? Well, let's talk for a moment about EMPs. Okay. You know, it's really kind of a bummer. EMPs, electromagnetic pulse weapons. A number of years ago, some people in Congress really tried to make an effort to draw our attention to EMPs because they knew it was a really big problem, but nobody wants to hear about those because they're so awful. And so basically they just gave up. And why? What am I talking about here? An EMP is a special kind of nuclear bomb that is designed to create the maximum electric. Oh, I'm sorry, EMP. I can't believe it. I've lost it. My memory's gone. Electromagnetic impulse weapon, or something like that. Anyway, the point is that they are incredibly dangerous for very interesting reasons. And one of the reasons they're dangerous is this. Anytime a country launches a missile, within 10 seconds, we know exactly how high it's going to go and where it's going to land. And if it's going to land in Japan, we're probably going to take it out. Just take that bubble around. If it's going to land in the ocean, it's like a test missile or whatever, fine, let it land in the ocean. But if a country sends up a satellite into orbit, we instantly know it is an orbital launch. And so we're not going to do a thing. And it's going to put that satellite in orbit and it's just going to cruise around the Earth. What if that satellite contains a nuclear weapon, an EMP bomb, electromagnetic pulse weapon, shielded? Do you think we have the technology to be able to detect that? I don't think so. And so the dang thing could be up there right now, orbiting away. And all they have to do is just drop it down at some point over the United States, boom, goes off, and the entire electrical grid in the US goes down, or Europe, or other countries. Now, is that possible? You bet your bottom dollar it's possible. And guess what? And I'm telling you, this is total accident. I had no idea. Michelle and Barack Obama are in the film business now. He was president, you may recall. He knew about the ET presence, by the way. Positive. Anyway. And they just lost, I think, their first Netflix series. Okay. And guess what it's about?
Betty and Barney Hill.
It's no. I don't. If that came out first, then this is the second, or that Betty and Barney Hill hasn't come out yet.
That's what I know, that they've got the rights to that, and that's in production.
I think though this is the first one, and it's about EMP, electromagnetic pulse weapon, goes off over the United States, and this series is about what happens after that.
Well, but this is where I'm going to say, but
that's right.
We've always been on the verge of all of this.
Sure.
I mean, and not only was World War II just a couple of weeks ago, that was very recent, but if the Cuban Missile Crisis and the trauma that the world went through at that moment, I think far outshines anything that we could consider today. It's only because, and I agree with everything that you just said. I think that all of that stuff is always on the table, but we've because we live in the moment, we know about the now and the tension that we're under. For sure. No question about it.
Yeah.
And everything that the world has gone through in the last 5 years has been pretty heavy. But that's not to say that the world hasn't dealt with some pretty tense situations in the very, very recent past. So I
hear you, Jimmy. But there's a back end to this that explains it. There's a back end. This is why what I'm saying is very relevant. I promise. I promise. So, and by the way, the Cuban Missile Crisis, I sat in front of the TV the whole time. It was a little disturbing, but I assure you, if the news goes off in Ukraine, I'm moving to New Zealand immediately. Okay. So anyway, so here's the key point. Because there's a decision to be made here. It's not like there's nothing we can do, but there is something we can do. And here is the decision. I mean, here is the point that is important. And I think everybody in your audience is going to understand exactly what I'm about to say is true. It's something that I learned later in life. I wish I had learned it when I was a very young man. Any kid that gets this down early in life is going to fare well. And what am I getting at? Whether you're talking about the life of a person or whether you're talking about the life of a nation, how well you're going to do in life, how happy you might be, how well a nation is going to do, is less about what happens to it, but how it responds to what happens to it. There is a huge difference. And over my lifetime, we have seen over and over again, things have happened that were not good, but the response to them were catastrophic. All right. And there are so many examples of this. I don't want to even bore people. I'm simply saying that, here's a simple way to explain it. Two men, virtually very similar. Same job, same position in the military. They go off to Iraq War. They have virtually the same experience. They go through the same trauma. They come back to the United States. One of them ends up on the street, an alcoholic, and dies in a couple of years by suicide. The other one goes on to get a degree and ends up the president of a university. The difference between what happened to those two men is not what happened to them. It's how they reacted to it. And that is true for nations as well. And so the point that I'm making is this. I believe something like that is going to happen because there's just too many people that want it to happen. And they've been living their life to have that happen. But the question is, will it happen in the pre-disclosure world or will it happen in the post-disclosure world? In the pre-disclosure world, before the entire planet becomes aware that they're not alone in the universe, ETs are already here, there's tech, there's all kinds of possibilities. We're going to get to go to the stars. It's Star Trek, it's Roddenberry time, it's the Galactic Federation. In that world, if somebody blows up a nuke or a terrorist attack or China invades Taiwan, I think there's a very good chance that the rest of the world will sit back for a second and consider how to respond to it so that we don't turn a bad thing into a global cataclysm. In other words, the worldview will have shifted. Our thinking will have shifted, not only people and citizens, but leaders of nations that like, okay, let's just don't go off half-cocked here. I mean, let's just kind of, step back. This is bad, but let's don't invade anything. Let's don't blow anything up until we settle down. Now, on the other hand, if one of those things happens before disclosure, I know exactly how we're going to react. We just had a perfect example of that. Something very bad happened. I'm not even going to specify it, but you're going to know what I'm talking about. Something really bad happened. And the people that did that bad thing knew exactly what the response was going to be because that's how we do. That's how we do. That's what we do. And they got exactly the response they got, and the whole thing is potentially turning into a catastrophe. That's pre-disclosure. We've seen it over and over again, right? I don't want to get the examples because people get all riled up. I'm just saying bad things happen to you in life, but how you react to them determines how your life goes. And nations are really rotten at reacting well because of the nature of sovereignty and a lot of other things. And so we've got to get to the post-disclosure world. And so if they put this off, the longer they put this off, the more likely we're going to be dealing with that before we've gotten disclosure. And we will miss the opportunity to have a different perspective. That's the first reason. Now, the second reason is non-trivial as well. For those of you that haven't figured it out already, we're about to have the election year from hell. It's going to surpass any other year from hell, election-wise, that we've ever lived through, and the bar is very, very high. This one is going to be off the charts. It's going to be unbearable. It's going to cost $6 billion. It's going to be beyond hyper-partisan. People are going to die. The news is going to be excessively repetitive. It's going to be back and forth. It's never going to change. It's going to go on day to day to day to day to day. People and politicians are going to be saying things. They're going to have you wanting to scream and jump.
Okay.
You get it. It's going to be awful. Now, we don't have to have that happen because if we get the hearings in January, what that means is that the world, the American people will know we're not alone. We're in the post-disclosure world. And the first primary is not till the end of February, I believe. Forget the Iowa caucus. The first primary. So all of these 2,000 candidates that are running for Senate and House and governorships. About 2,000 balloted candidates are going to have time to get up to speed. They can kind of learn, go read some books, read Richard Dolan, watch some Jimmy Church shows, whatever it takes to get up to speed and understand something about this unbelievable thing that's now been confirmed. Become literate. And so when they go out to campaign, the focus will shift away from the wrath of, awful stuff.
I agree. I agree with that.
On this. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree with that, and I agree with it for different reasons, and I have been saying this for years that if we enter into a post-disclosure situation where the world is told that not only are we not alone in the universe, but we are being visited right now, right now. Okay, once that realization hits, consciousness, DNA is changed.
Yeah.
Consciousness is changed from that moment forward, in that we are now earthlings and we are focused on hope and the future. It will instantly change for generations forward. And so putting politics aside, or election cycles, nuclear weapon, whatever, all that, no, that's not the reasons why. The absolute fundamental core of us all changes, and now to turn it into a possible geopolitical conversation, that is inevitable. But the geopolitical lines are going to be ghosty. They're going to be see-through. They're not going to be brick walls like they are now. And that's the reason for it. And that's why I totally agree with you. And right now, with the momentum that we have, and it is indeed tangible, we do need to seize the moment. I don't think there's any question about it. And it's not only, but Stephen, I know that people look at the United States, and certainly the United States, Americans live in this bubble that we are at the center of everything. And yes, the rest of the world does look at us in a certain way. But this is also a conversation that is happening planet-wide.
Of course.
This isn't just a Washington, D.C. thing. And that's why I'm saying it's so tangible. And here's the other part, okay? And then I'll flip it back to you. Is this. The statement has to come, a decision, the king falling, right, from a Senate hearing. I think that's pretty good. It's a pretty good take. I may have stolen it moving forward.
Take it as yours, my friend.
Yeah, that's a pretty good.
I want more barbecue.
But until a state, a head of state, as probably the president of the United States, does make that statement, we are always one step short. And the rest of the world is not going to, you know what I mean? It's got to be that. And I think that's where we are. I don't need, it's weird. And every time I say this, I get booed. I don't need disclosure. I've seen too much weird shit.
Personally, you don't need it.
But that's not what is needed for the rest of the world.
It's the country that needs it. It's the nations that need it, but the nations are made up of people, and their worldview is going to be impacted. So there's the worldview change. That's what Danny Sheehan deals with. He set up the New Paradigm Institute, which is a post-disclosure think tank. It's all about that. There are actually post-disclosure organizations forming right now. The Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is a post-disclosure organization anticipating that. Gary Nolan, I should talk about him later, but Gary Nolan has created a post-disclosure think tank based on science and tech called Soul. And believe me, other things are happening. There's things going on in Hollywood, and most of it is not about, what can we do to find out what's going on? Oh, no, it's how can we get ready for what is coming? But in very practical terms. And again, we're talking about the Senate. We're talking about the Senate Majority Leader, and they help run the country, and they took an oath to serve the American people. And so this is very much more domestic in a sense, in that if we get disclosure early, and these candidates can get up to speed, they will be able to act like human beings. They will be able to speak to the issue. The issue will take a lot of the venom out of this election. But most importantly, when we finally elect the new government that will take over in 2025, 435 members of Congress, 33 members of the Senate, number of governorships, important state senatorships, we will be electing a government based upon partially what they have been able to say about the post-disclosure world, about how they think about it, where they think it should go, what can we do in it, right? What is their opinion? That will be part of the selection process, and we will have an educated government with people. We have a sense of what they're going to do. If we don't get that hearing done, and it gets pushed forward, once the battle gets underway, the awfulness that is coming, it probably can't happen this year. In which case, we get the same damn government in 25 we have now, and it's going to cost us another $6 billion to put them into office. This is an incredible waste of an opportunity, right? America is still the leading country. And we can't afford to have democracy fall apart. We can't afford to have more discord and more, just erosion of our center. This is an opportunity to snap back into place here, and it's in the hands of three men. They stand on the cusp of history, and that often happens. They didn't ask for it. It wasn't in their resume. It came to them. There's a saying that you don't go to history. History comes to you. Asked Abraham Lincoln, right? And so it's Warner, Rubio, and Schumer. Schumer is the master chess player. He's making the most important moves, but the other gentlemen have done well. And the entire Intel committee, to some degree, all 17 are on board. All 17 have signed at least 2 letters regarding this. One, I think, went to Arrow, one to the White House. So they're all on record historically supporting getting this done. Now they just have to do it. And so I'm just saying, let's do everything we can to help them along. And let's don't let anything distract us. I don't know what's going to happen out there. Something stupid is going to happen. But if it isn't really awful, we just got to put a pin in it and get the hearing done. And then come back to it after the president finally brings us to the post-disclosure world, which is going to significantly draw our attention away from a lot of the bad behavior we have in mind to focus on something very positive, very forward-looking.
Exactly.
We need that right now. And they can give it to us.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. The links for everything, for the shift storm and everything else, the links are below. They're also over on our website. We have it on social media too, as well. I wanted to ask you about the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance and the mission and the idea behind it. Let everybody know what's going on if they haven't heard about it.
One of my concerns, and I've talked about this over the years, though it's less of a concern now because of the rise of social media, the rise of activism on the web, and the podcast revolution, the broadcast revolution, whatever, and you're all part of that, Jimmy. But for most of the last 26 years, I just had this vision that when disclosure comes, all the mainstream people will come forward and say, oh, yes. We always knew, but we couldn't deal with it now, but we're ready to take it on. And so we have the money, we have the gravitas and so forth, and we'll take it from here. And they're going to look at all the people that you and I know, Jim, the ones that have slaved and worked on this while being ridiculed and demeaned, unable to get any money, having to do it themselves, right? Wrote all those books behind me, okay? All those books are all those books are pre-2005. So anyway, and they're going to say, look, it's good. You did well. Now just go away. Okay. We'll take it from here. All right. And I've run across this attitude. There's kind of a little thing there. And it goes like this. For most of the last 76 years, the people in our world, Jimmy, were crazy. We were all told that we're crazy. They're all crazy. They're all crazy. And then it turns out we're right. Okay. And you know what some of the people are going to respond, how they're going to respond to that in the mainstream world? Well, back then you were crazy because nobody would be sane to take this on. And though you're right, the fact that you actually dealt with the issue back when it was silly to do it, you're still crazy. And so we'd rather you just go away. Okay. And that has always bugged me. But thanks to the internet, we have really made it much more difficult to be shoved aside. However, that's not enough. And so the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance, it came between me and in a meeting in a Italian deli in Beverly Hills with my partner in this, Dan Harari, who is a longtime career publicist in Hollywood. And as it happened, we met at a conference, and he said hello, and we chatted, and then I walked away. A lot of people talked to me, and as I was walking away, and he said, "Oh yeah, by the way, I'm a Hollywood publicist." I pivoted so fast, Jim, that I could have broken my neck. I mean, it literally was like this, And I said, "Oh," and I sat down, and we had a nice chat, right? And now he's my publicist. Anyway, it turns out that 35 years ago, he was the publicist for another organization. It was launched back around, I think, 89. And it was launched in a big way, not the way we did. We bootstrapped this, but in a big way with multi-million dollars, because it was launched by Norman Lear and his wife. Norman Lear just died at 101, and he was the god of television back then, and a progressive. And what he did, he had this idea for the Hollywood Environmental Association. I'm sorry, forgive me. It's the Environmental Media Association. All right. And what was it? It was, and they launched it with $1 million awards dinner. It was a networking organization to connect the entire entertainment industry and all its power and gifts and everything else to the entire environmental activist movement, which was much vaster than the movement that I'm in, the Disclousre movement. It covers hundreds of different issues, huge amount of organizations to connect them and make it easier for them to get together to create content and get the messaging right and things like that. It was basically a networking entity, and all the big stars joined up and the big producers and everything. It's still around 30 years later. If you go to the website, it's a fantastic website, Environmental Media Association, EMA, and they talk about how their public relations department has done 5.5 billion imprints in terms of media releases and things like that. And so they played a very important role. And so essentially the environmental activist movement and the people that make content came together, and it's benefited everybody. And so he said, let's create the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance based on that concept. To do what? A nonprofit, non-commercial, completely non-commercial networking entity to make it easier for the film industry, the entertainment industry, the people that have been, making all those movies that have made nearly $200 billion in total sales, and the people that have been doing all this work for the last 30 years. By those within that industry coming forward and identifying themselves as people that like this, are interested in this, and they are founding members in the HDA as what we'll call Hollywood founding members. And then the people in the UAP industry, the UAP world, researchers, activists, journalists, documentarists, even witnesses, contactees, and they become founding members, and so they can easily identify who to get in touch with, or people outside of the HGA can look at it and go, "Hey, that's who I want to reach out to," and it's all post-disclosure, because what we must have post-disclosure is a massive effort to get content out to the world. And the American film industry is the biggest in the world, but we're also, we involve Canada and the UK and even India, but whatever. The professional content makers need to get together with the researchers and activists that know this issue to make that content. Now, things are happening all over Hollywood. There's projects in development everywhere. They figured it out. They know what's coming down. And recently there were 2 huge documentary series by big shots. Okay, which is great, right? I went out to Hollywood 2.5 years ago to try to make things happen. It's not been an easy 2.5 years because everything went to hell, but I hung in, and I have a series that may land soon. The point is that about 2 years ago, J.J. Abrams, AA list, okay, and his Bad Robot Productions took over another project that wasn't doing well, got it finished, and put it out on Showtime called UFO. It was a 4-part documentary, right, on the subject, and it wasn't bad, but the 4th one was awful. They blew it. If they had communicated with the people in this field, got there to consult in, they might have avoided that. 2 years later, the man, Steven Spielberg, drops a documentary series, right? It's called Encounters, 4 episodes, documentary. This is what we want, and this is Spielberg. Unfortunately, he was not getting enough consultation from the people on our side of the fence. And so they made a colossal blunder in one of those episodes. It could have been avoided. I'm not throwing shade at Steven Spielberg. Believe me, I'm simply saying that the challenge before the world to educate 8 billion people as quickly as possible, properly, with the right information, is in the hands of these incredible genius filmmakers. But the information is in the hands of you and me and Richard and everybody else that's ever been on your show. And we're trying to make sure they don't get left out of this. And that is what the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is about. We have 20 board members already. Mostly they're ambassadors. We're run by an executive committee. 10 of them are film people or industry people, and 10 of them are EUAP people. And we've got 26 film industry founding members. All you have to do is provide a bio and a pic, and you're in. Well, and we have to prove you, of course. You have to have some time and grade, all right? And we've got 42 UAP members and about 40 more that want to land the plane, and they're circling over Glendale at about 2,000 or 10,000 feet. And I can't bring them in because we need more people in the film industry on board as FM. So as we get more film industry people in as founding members, I'll start bringing in UAP people. It's possible, or be ideal, if in about 4 weeks, we could get up to about 50 film industry founding members, maybe 60 to 70 UAP founding members, 120 plus our 20 board members. So you see a pretty substantial networking there. We're about to get our 501(c) status, and we'll start seeking donations. We're not going to be involved in any deals. We're not going to charge attendance. We're not going to charge for membership. We're going to absolutely non-commercial, because when you're doing something like what we're doing, you have to be purer than Caesar's wife. But everybody in it, we want them to get together. We want them to make docs. We want them to make a fortune. Fine, whatever. Make the money, use it to enjoy life, use it to do more projects. But we want to help them have projects, right? They get done quickly, because the world isn't going to wait for this content. And if we don't do that, the professionals will take over, and we will be slowly kind of pressed into the back. However, we do have one ace in the hole, and that is the podcast netcast revolution, of which you're a part of. I have done 50 interviews in the last 30 days. I've got 25 more scheduled. I can do podcast all day long because I'm the podcast king. Call me up, give me 5 minutes notice. I'm in front of this computer. And so you guarantee that we're always going to be able to get the word out. We'll all be able to talk about what we're doing, and that will get out there to those that are creating content. And so I think the chances of being left behind for those that don't want to be left behind are a lot better than they were, say, 20 years ago or 25 years ago when I got in. But that's what the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance is about. It's a bootstrap, a little shaky, but the people are great, and there's already been some deals made, and I invite people to check it out at HollywoodDisclosureAlliance.org. And does Jimmy have an invite? You bet your bottom dollar he does.
Well, and thank you for that. You're right about J.J. Abrams and Spielberg, by the way, where JJ, there's a basic, you go to film school and you learn screenwriting and you learn about the hero's journey and how to write a screenplay and act 1, 2, and 3 and how to put, you learn these things. All of that was thrown out the window with J.J. Abrams. What was set up in episodes 1 and episodes 2 came apart in episode 3 and absolutely sank like the Titanic. By the time episode 4, there was no message there. There wasn't anything consistent. And I don't understand when you have that kind of money that you don't have a clear vision for the series. It could have been excellent. That's number one. Number two,
but I want to respond to that when you get done, please. Go ahead.
Okay, and Spielberg, what Spielberg did, well, okay, there was a lot of new information in Encounters. And I understand the energy and the effort to bring out new information. And even for me, where I see so much, even I got a few nuggets out of that. Oh, sure. The two stumbles that were made in that series that was glaring, I stepped back and went, clearly, there was no consultation here. And for Amblin, who absolutely has the money and the resources and the brain power, right? Because that had an act 1, 2, and 3. It was really well laid out, but there were some mistakes made. And that coming from Amblin and Spielberg as an executive producer, that should have never happened. And two wasted opportunities that could have absolutely just.
All right. 2 quick points. First of all, J.J. Abrams was not hands-on there. He took it on. There was a bunch of producers meeting. There was a bunch of them, but JJ. So they did it, not JJ. His name was on it, of course, and he backed it. So it's not like he made the mistake, but the people that were working for him kind of botched it up. Okay, and so that's the truth. Now, in terms of the Spielberg, this is why we're having the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. Remember, we're still in the truth embargo. The truth embargo is still on. Okay, we haven't gotten disclosure, and the truth embargo successfully ghettoized the people in this field going all the way back to 47. Okay, when they took Mac Brazel off the street and interrogated him for a week and said, "You didn't see what you saw, Max," and he's actually, there's a story about that in the front page of the July 9th, 1947 Roswell Daily Record, where he says, "I wish I never saw the damn thing. They gave him a new truck and he left town." So it's still on. And so everybody's a victim of that, including Steven Spielberg, because that truth embargo is a wall between the mainstream world with the money and the power and the genius, and God knows this town, Hollywood, is filled with genius, and all the people that did the work, right? The Don Schmitz, the Linda Moulton Howe, Richard Dolan, even the journalists and so forth, all of them were operating in that kind of special space, right? And now we need to make sure that space closes and that these people are going to be brought in and worked with. In other words, take advantage of their knowledge, because the day after disclosure, 90% of everything in those books there is going to be true. 10% won't be, but about 90% is true. We pretty much had it pegged from the beginning, all right? And while the crazy stuff does turn up, that's also the result of the truth embargo. But in terms of the fundamental work done by pretty sharp people for very little pay, very little recognition, in many cases, not much payoff, a tough gig. Not everyone. Some people manage to really capitalize on it. Good for them. But 90% is going to be true. And the historians are going to have to go into all that stuff. It's all going to be reviewed. All the books, all the documentaries, all the files that are now properly being archived by David Marler and also by Kreipel at Rice University. They're starting to consolidate now all this work. Very good. It's going to have to go through because it was true. Okay. And so it's time to prepare for the post-disclosure world. Okay, I'm asking people to do that. Soon I will convert Paradigm Research Group into a 501c3. Don't ask why, it hasn't happened before. And it's going to become a think tank, not an activist organization, a small one. But in the press building, 2 blocks from the White House. Danny's new Paradigm Institute is going to be raising millions. He'll be happy to talk to you about that. And his office is 1 block from the Capitol. He can hit the Capitol with a 9-iron. I can put a ball in the White House grounds with a 3-wood. Now you don't want to do that because you'll be visited, right? But still, we're right here, you know. So we're gearing up for the post-disclosure world. You want to know who else is? Gary Nolan. Gary Nolan is building up for the post-disclosure world. And the thing about Gary Nolan is that he's the 3rd guy. You had Elizondo was the Intel guy. He was a spokesperson. He came out, talked all over the place. Not easy gig, very tough. Mellon was the political guy behind the scenes, bringing the people up for briefings. Gary didn't come in really active until later. He's the science guy. He's the guy with the Nobel Prize nominee, genius in physics, and an endowed chair at Stanford, who was part of the original To the Stars Academy. And I was always wondering, why were there so many people in that group of 10 that were involved in the biological scientists, particularly Nolan, who was in genetics, a genius in genetics? Can you guess why they would have had a genetics genius in the original 10? Can you just take a wild guess why they would do that? And so finally he comes forward, and what does he do? He goes on Tucker Carlson, and he goes on News Nation, Tucker Carlson, I think News Nation. No, Tucker Carlson and I forget. Anyway, and he says there's an extraterrestrial presence. Flat out. He says there's an extraterrestrial presence. What is he doing? He's saying, this isn't John Mack from 30 years ago. In the year 2023, I'm a Nobel Prize nominee in genetics. I have enormous contacts all over the world. I'm also a very successful entrepreneur. I'm worth a great deal of money. And I am saying on camera, there's an extraterrestrial presence. And so you scientists out there who have been hedging this thing and sitting on your butt for the last 20 years, you may want to think about coming out. If you know, say it. If you're doing work on it, talk about it. And for God's sakes, don't go on shows and go, well, we need more evidence. We don't really know what they are, or all that kind of crap. Don't do that, right? If you really can't go right to the heart of it, don't say anything at all. And so he's kind of the leader of the science that's going to come. And that's, that's where I'm going. That's it. That's all I got.
Steven,
I love Gary Nolan. I had to give him a plug.
Yeah, you should. His show with Fade to Black, he went straight there. It was extraordinary. Steven, I've got the links up for everything. Paradigm Research Group. I've got Shift Storm up. I've got Hollywood Disclosure Alliance up. I've got the other two links up too as well for the PDFs. Keep doing what you're doing. I'll check in with you next month. We'll get you back on the show. Thank you so much, Stephen. Hey, be safe out there. It's a crazy world. Happy holidays. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. Bye, Stephen.
Bye.
Stephen Bassett. That was an incredible show, and what a great way to present everybody with a Christmas gift right before the holidays. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I am going to get out of here. I'm going to remind everybody that tomorrow night I am doing my holiday AMA, AJA. That is tomorrow night. So I'm just going to hang out with you Fadernauts before the holidays. Everything's on the table. We'll do all of that tomorrow night. I want to thank Stephen Bassett for coming in tonight. Perfect show. Fade to Black is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee Newman, and Michelle Freed. Thank you to Bill. Thank you to Jonaside. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Kevin. Webmaster was Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy, spaceboymusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and this broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2023 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network, Inc. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black of the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll see everybody tomorrow night for my holiday AMA. Until then, be safe. Go back, Lee Tappy.